So now I'm not a designer, right? So, but I've read a lot about this, so I'm going to give you just some basics, and I'm going to go fast over this that you should know. I don't think you should be an expert, but you should know a little bit about design to improve your presentation. So here are some things that I think might be useful to know. The first one, we kind of talk about it. Contrast is interesting. Contrast is interesting not visually, but contrast of opinion is interesting. If you want to engage your student, you should offer them contrast. If you want to engage them visually, offer them contrast. You could do a contrast with color. You can do contrast with this, use cute two dogs, right? You can do contrast that way by size, different sizes, different color, different sizes. You can do contrast by putting things in different places, by position, right? You could go into contrast that way. And you remember the image with the color. Color is a really good way of doing contrast, right? So contrast is important. Make sure you understand kind of the best way to do it is with color, with size, and with position. Yeah.
I have a question about the dogs.
Uh-huh.
You can go back to the dogs.
Here we go.
You said not to turn off the lights because the students will go to sleep. What about putting, let's say, making contrast gray here and putting a red background? So because the dogs sort of...
Yeah. So sometimes what I do, like in a room like this, what you could do is to simply have a black background and have white words. And that would probably, it's just the problem is that, that right now, if I have this slide, it's probably, see, that much better, see? So this is how my lecture hall looks like. So if my lecture hall looks like this works really well. And I think since lighting is usually not great in most places, I usually go with white. But if lighting is going to be really good, then you should perfectly go with black in the background and white with the letters. Right? Very good question. Contrast, position, alignment. So think about that slide, right? If I want you to focus on particular points of this message, right? There's different parts. There's the title, there's me, and there's my association. I can create contrast by grouping those things in different places, like that. That's better, right? So now I'm using contrast to create a difference between my main topic, my subtopic. I am actually putting this clearly below because there's two different things. This is me, and that's my topic. And then I'm using contrast here, black and white, to actually tell you the difference in between my name and my association. I can also do it this way. But it's basically the same idea, using contrast and position to kind of highlight where you want people to look at. OK, what I have here. I'm going to go fastly over this one. Types, right, tells you a little bit about your personality, right? So for instance, you should know a little bit about type. If you use Courier New, you're organized and structured. If you use Common Sense, you're playful. If you use Times New Roman, you're lazy, apathetic, or humanities, and you always use the default. Don't use Times New Roman, please, please. Now, if you freehand script, you're a horrible speller, so you try to hide with a hard-to-read font. Now, type is important. There's two main things you know about type. That's what you should know. There's two types of types, serif and sans serif. Serif are types that are really good for reading because you can actually see what kind of word you have when you're very close because it have that little kind of end to the word. You see that little, in the S, it has that little thing at the end, kind of like right? Versus this one that has nothing, right? It's a clean word. This is sans serif, that's serif. The one I'm using today is called Guild Sans. That's usually the one I use. Do not use serif fonts in your presentation. You want to use sans serif fonts in your presentation. They're clear. It's actually a lot easier to see the words with that type of font.
Jose, what did you say your font is?
Guild Sans. Yes, I'm going to write it here. Guild Sans. Most PowerPoints should actually have it. It's the one I usually use. I try to use one type throughout the presentation. More than one type, it's OK. Two types, I think more than. You want to create contrast in one slide. But it's kind of a good idea to use the same font. OK, here's another good, really good tip. So remember this picture, right? So here's a picture, and I put a white background, you get the idea, right? So there's this theory called Gestalt theory, without giving you a lot of a lot of details on this, but there's a lot of design uses this theory. One of the principles that they have is called closure. And the idea is that your eyes are going to try to close the image if the image is not complete. Now, there, the image is complete because it has white here or a different color here. Now, if I want to take advantage of that principle, closure principle, what I can do is to expand this image, and what your eye will do is you will close that picture for me, whichever way you want. Make sense? So this is a lot more effective because you are bringing closure to the actual picture. So this is really, really easy to do. Here's another example. See that? See, that's an incomplete, this is what a picture that I got. So if I put that in the corner, you finish the picture. And it's a nicer look, it's more sophisticated, and it also allows you to use your own imagination to sort of complete my image. You get a lot more from it. Okay, here's another idea. So when using location, and you don't have to do it basically, but there's a basic idea that photographers use that is called the rule of thirds. And if you can imagine the PowerPoint slide as a grid like this, and you can do this with the grid lines, I show you how to do this in your handouts. The idea here is that these points right here, the crossings, are called PowerPoints. So what you want to do is you want to be close to the PowerPoints. Your elements should be close to the PowerPoints, because vision, there's a lot of research to suggest that putting the thing in the middle is not the best, right? Your vision doesn't work like you think it should work sometimes, right? We read from left to right, and we do other things. So we actually tend to focus more on elements that are in those areas. So this is a really effective, because I don't actually have to use these grids anymore, because you don't have to do it, you can do it mentally, right? So I know that I don't have to always put things in the middle. I can put it around and actually create more effective work. That's what I use for this picture. See, that is in the PowerPoint. Yeah?
There's a theory that in looking at the eyes and people going to art museums, that the eye tends to start at the upper left and sweeps in Z fashion down to the lower right.
That's true.
Is that why you?
Yeah, that's part of it, right? So I can also put things, you see what, I can use the thirds in any way I want to. I can put my words at the top, on the top third, and then if I have text, that's the best way to do it. Actually, that's why we do it. I put the first in the first half, more text in the second half, third half, because you're right. People actually, we actually see in that way. We go like this, and then we come back, and then we come back. There's people who bring people to the laboratory, and they kind of see how they're looking at stuff. Yeah.